afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's broadcast, Accelerate, Speed Up Success with Engaged Employees. I'm pleased to have with me today a wonderful dynamic set of speakers who I will introduce shortly to the audience participating in today's program. To give you a little bit of insight into our organization, we are TNS, the world's largest provider of human and market research behavior. We deliver actionable insights to more than 2,500 customers around the globe. And I'm delighted that our speakers here today, who are among our 13,000 employees who operate in really 80 different countries, are here to share some insight around an exciting program we call Accelerate. I will begin today by introducing our speakers, and then we will turn the program over to talk about marketing and HR campaign management. Then we're going to have a really lively panel discussion today and give our audience the opportunity to ask some questions as well throughout the broadcast. So please make sure if you have questions, you're able to post them via the chat panels and the Q&A panels, and we'll be sure to try to get to all of the questions during today's program. At this point, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today that will be speaking in our panel discussion. We have Chris Jaworski, who is the Chief Knowledge Officer for TNS Stakeholder Management Practice in North America. In that role, he is responsible for the integration of organizational assessments and customer satisfaction and loyalty techniques and insights for both the practice and for many of our key clients. Also with me today in the program is Mike Schroeder. He is the CEO of TNS Employee Insights, which is part of the Stakeholder Management Practice Group. He brings together a wealth of experience in the employee research field. He and his team have designed and implemented large-scale employee engagement survey programs and systems for some of the world's largest organizations. So welcome to the program, gentlemen, and we're excited to have you as part of our educational series. I'm going to turn the broadcast at this point over to Mike Schroeder, who's going to share a little bit of an introduction to how this particular program is part of our suite of products and services.
Christy, thank you very much for having Chris and I on your educational series. We're delighted to be here and anxious to walk through the program Accelerate and explain this kind of business technique that can help organizations speed up either new campaigns or services so that they can basically grow their businesses at a quicker pace. To kind of kick things off, our designers decided that since it's still golf season here in North America, they put us in a sand trap. And oftentimes, business get into sand traps when it comes to new campaigns, mergers, acquisitions, etc. And they fail to really reach their full potential of that particular endeavor. And this is evident if you kind of take a look back at some of the mergers in the past, such as an AOL, Time Warner type of a merger, or if you just take a look at some smaller activities but important ones within a corporation, where the marketing department may be saying one thing in print ads and commercials, but then when you go into the store and try to pick up the merchandise or get the service, you're saddened with your experience because it doesn't meet your expectation. That's really what we're going to talk about today is how do you, within a business environment, and specifically within HR, try to accelerate the process and move this forward so you don't get stuck in the sand trap.
Sounds great.
There's a graphic that they put together for us to help us with this, and this is on this next page. And if you take a look at this graphic, kind of follow the design here a bit, you're following the blue line along, and that's your performance level. And if you continue to do what you're doing, that performance may continue to go up, which is the dotted line. But oftentimes, we try to bring in change, maybe new concepts, new companies, new products, new procedures. And our hope and our desire is that we can move through the performance line that we're currently at, that blue line, and get to a new level, which is the pink line that you see. But we have to get through that curve that's in the bottom. And that curve is where oftentimes companies get stuck, and it's an important place for HR to be able to step in from a talent management perspective and help us through that curve. As you read that word, you can kind of figure out what it means. The designers kind of clumped it all together, but take a look, you'll understand it. I think it really comes alive when you start to think about some day-to-day practical examples. And one of the ones that, is one of my favorites is years ago, my wife's grandmother was talking about some of her kitchen utensils. and Grandma basically needed a new toaster. So we decided, oh, what a great Christmas gift for Grandma. And so we talked with Grandma about it. She said, I don't mind you getting me a new toaster as long as it's exactly the same as the one I have. Grandma didn't want to go through the curve of pissed offness in trying to improve what's happening in her kitchen. If you go on to the next slide, I think we've all been through this, where you get a new cell phone, and suddenly you're in a situation where, you've got this new device, it's got some new features, some new buttons, and it's how do I work this? The intent is obviously to increase your productivity. Maybe now you can text, maybe now you can get emails. But it's those early days of trying to figure out, how does this thing work? And I think we've all probably sat next to a friend or a colleague who got a new cell phone and was in a meeting, and all of a sudden it started to go off and they had no idea how to shut that baby off.
I had experienced this firsthand the last year in getting the new BlackBerry. Boy, that was a little challenging for me to adapt to that. And it got me thinking, what are some of the reasons that new product launches either fail, or what happens as a result of when that failure occurs?
Well, let's jump into that next, and that is, why do campaigns or launches typically fail? One element is, if you look at it, were the employees that were a part of it really ready for it? When you think about it and trying to understand that, the readiness is really key. Oftentimes, marketing or the executive team, they may have been thinking about this and studying it for months or possibly even years before they decided to pull the trigger and do something. And then they are all excited and they want to roll it out. But really what happens in that situation is the employees aren't ready. They weren't given all the pre-information. They weren't given the reasons behind it. So their readiness for accepting this change is quite low. The motives can be very unclear as well. How would you have liked to have been, the employees at the airlines when the airline decided to start to charge for bags? Suddenly they're the ones on the front line trying to tell the customers, hey, you have to pay now to check that bag. And if they don't understand the motives to that, they aren't going to buy into it, and it can cause the program to fail. So poor communications obviously is critical in this whole process. Some other areas include the tools that need to do the work, the training that's there as well. And I had experience literally just the other day at a bank here in the Chicagoland area where I was closing an account, and the teller that was working with me said, the last one I tried to do, I screwed up. I hope I do this one right, because I don't want this going on your credit report.
Oh.
So as a customer, I'm standing outside.
You can feel real comfortable.
Situation, exactly. So those are the reasons behind it, and you have to be mindful of that as you move through the process. From there, we're also going to talk about, so what does this cause? And we'll look at the kind of the domino effect as far as what happens when this occurs. Our research certainly shows that there's slowdowns as far as the program rollout. There's confusion certainly among the employee, and obviously in my case also now amongst the customer. People talk a lot today about employee engagement. And, it could be one thing to run an employee engagement survey, but it's a whole nother business level to be thinking about employee engagement and bringing the employee in on new products, new offerings, new marketing campaigns, so that they truly are engaged and excited about this particular offer. You see that, again, kind of the baggage situation. Southwest Airlines actually using their baggage handling employees to be the ones communicating the message to the customers. What a wonderful way to really involve the employees, get them engaged in the whole process, and help them get that message out to customers as well.
Well, that is an organization that's truly succeeded at that particular messaging. Do you have any tips of how other people can be more successful in launching campaigns or product launches?
We certainly do. We tried to bundle these together in a few ways and try to sum it up to keep it simple. So we put together what we thought were 4 keys to success as you kind of think about this. And these are really, really critical for HR and talent management professionals. It's an opportunity for you to be able to really come into the picture and bring your area of expertise to light as people start to roll out new campaigns, programs, et cetera, within the company. The key area here, as you take a look at either the diagram or the wording on the left, is to identify how are people, employees within the organization, thinking, feeling, doing about this. And at the bottom, kind of the WIFM, what's in it for them.
Sure.
When you get this balance correct, that's when you're really going to engage your employees. That's when you're going to be able to pull them into the program and have that program be successful. So as HR professionals and talent management professionals, your job is to bring this to the table. The reason I bring it up in that fashion is engineering may be designing a new product at Motorola or IKEA or some of the other manufacturers, but it's really thinking about the human side of it to be able to make it work. So the thinking part of it, obviously people need to understand what's the strategy. Why is the company doing this? Why are we putting this into place, and why is it important to the success of the organization? It's the strategic component.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling is a little bit different. The feeling is you're trying to capture the emotion behind it. And you see that, again, on the Southwest Airlines where the baggage guys are crying about the bags. They're trying to bring a feeling in, far beyond just sharing the story, but they're trying to bring that feeling in as well. When you think of brands and brand management, and you think about what creates a brand, you know, key marketers really tell you it's not what the brand does, it's how the brand makes you feel. And so human resource needs to bring that expertise to the table in corporations, and that is, how does this new offering going to make our employees feel? The next one is doing. Do they know what to do? You know, it comes down to actually implementation. Just like the one teller that in my story before, that individual didn't have the training. They didn't have the practice. They didn't have the resources or the knowledge. What do actually I need to do? So these three pieces really need to come together to be able to make it work. Some quick examples. Oftentimes companies say, we want to be a company that's easy to do business with. And I see that in a lot of different reports and different ways that companies are looking at how do we grow and how do we attract more customers. Some companies that have actually converted that message into doing something would be UPS as an example on the shipping and receiving side. I know in our offices a few years ago, UPS actually brought computers in with scales, with printers, so now when we want to ship something UPS, we have all the tools and the equipment that we need to do that. It makes the employees look better because it's faster for them. They have consistent packaging. They have consistent labels. It all works together. So from a customer perspective, it's easy to do business. From an employee perspective, it makes the employees at UPS look even better to the eyes of the customer. Another organization that has done this well is Enterprise Rental Car. If you look back at some of their commercials and themes, they'll pick you up. That's easy to do business with. But you can imagine on the employee side what they had to go through, the thinking, hooking the employees, then actually going through the motions of what is it going to take to drive out to a customer site, pick them up, bring them back to the store operations and get them into their car. But it's important for HR to be able to get this right. And to me, this is really where talent management comes in. It's bringing this into the talent because this is a mixture of not only strategy, but also training and emotion to the company.
And I think those examples really drove home nicely how it works, and I believe you're going to share a few more in a little bit. But I do want to go back to that point about human resource professionals and talent management. That are many of them who are participating in today's program, and what tips do you have for them to be successful?
I think the keys for them is they need to be looking at the rollout process and really partner with marketing and partner with operations to show them how to do this. The folks in marketing understand what the clients or the customers are looking for. They're going to need some help in rolling this type of a program out throughout the company. Same thing as if you acquire a company or you're going through some other major changes. So you've got to kind of get on their team and help them thinking about these 4 keys to success to be able to make it work. You also need to bring some metrics into the picture. People love metrics. They like to keep score. So if you can teach them how to keep score against these 4 keys, that makes their life a little bit easier, and I'll show you some examples of that in a minute.
Great.
Tied to this, and this is the talent management side, based upon the data that you're collecting in the information flow, that's where you can come in and start coaching people, asking for action plans, holding them accountable for the results that you're receiving. Another very important part that HR needs to bring in and really partner with marketing on is bringing in the business metrics. People want to know, how does this actually tie to our business results, and then reward people for those various successes.
Share with us an example then.
I've got 3 of them actually. I'll share these with you. There's a variety of organizations out there, obviously in the consumer side, Best Buy. A few years ago, Best Buy was faced with a kind of a critical situation, and there's actually a book written about it. But this is about 1998, 1999. They were losing against their competitor, Circuit City. They needed to make some changes as far as how they actually operated as a retailer. And what they found is that a lot of their stores were running as kind of independent, cowboyish type of operations. They all needed to get together on a common platform and a common way to retail their products. So they implemented this type of change where they put in the metrics, they put in the coaches, they put in the people to help convert and get each of the individual stores working in the same fashion. Because of that, Best Buy obviously has now outpaced its competitor, its key competitor, Circuit City, who has now gone out of business, and they've grown dramatically since then. Another story kind of that fits in here as well is the Disney organization. Many years ago, Disney over in California, which was the original Disneyland, decided that they wanted to convert their parking lot for that park into a new, entertainment site. And so they created the Disney California Adventures. But it required a lot of work with employees, and even at that time, their guests. The cast members needed to understand the vision behind this. What was this going to mean for them? Emotionally, they had to get charged about this and excited about it. And then they also needed to learn, what is it that I have to do to be able to make this work? When the park was going through its rebuild process, they were building new hotels, new rides, new features, new restaurants. So lots of learning was going to take place. They really needed to engage their cast members to be able to pull that off. A third example is more on the industrial side, and this is United Technologies. They, too, recognized the importance of the quality of their products and services, wanted to roll out a new quality improvement program they call ACE. Other companies may call Six Sigma or other types of ISO-type programs. But again, how do you get the employees on board with you? There's new procedures, new methods, new techniques. You have to try to win them as far as strategy, as far as getting their heart involved, the emotional side, and also the doing side. So 3 great examples, 3 different environments, all brought HR in to be able to help them with the measurement and the implementation to be able to make it work.
Those are great examples. And I know you mentioned when we were discussing and planning for this program today, a really great quote that I'd like to share with everybody because I think it really drives home the message that you just spoke about.
I think the quote is, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it or improve it. You heard that, and I think Deming was certainly a big proponent of this on the quality side, but HR needs to be as well. There's got to be a specific way to measure it, and what you're looking to measure would be these 4 different keys to really capture what's happening in the hearts and the minds and the hands of employees to be able to bring it together.
And can you share some specific examples on how you measure success, or how does one actually go about quantifying this as part of a rollout program?
Yeah, let's take a look. We pulled together a few graphics. Again, this is our graphics team, working their wonders and pulling some things together. But here's a couple of examples, of where you can measure this across an organization. And, you'd like to think that, when it comes to measurement, that the group that ought to handle this in a company is finance. But finance probably isn't the group that you want to get involved in this. This should be something that's coming out of HR, something that's coming out of the talent management area.
Good point.
What you want to do is to be able to look across your organization and break it down on the left-hand side as business segments. So here we have just a simple example. Total company, we've got a couple regions, Canada and the United States, and we've got some cities from within. In this, what we're looking to do is to send out a questionnaire to the employees that work in these different regions, get their input, get their ideas. How is this going? And what you want to be asking them would be some questions about, do they understand the strategy, the thinking side? What do they feel about this? Capture that emotion. And then also, do they know what to do? So in this example, you can see the different boxes then next to some of the cities. If it's red, that means there's problems. If it's checked off, that means they've exceeded a certain cutoff score. So in our example here, you can see that the folks in Toronto are starting to get it, where the folks in Chicago are still way behind. These are the type of metrics that are so important to bring this in, drives the point home, but it also gives managers then something to focus on in the specifics that they need to be able to get this done.
So now that we know Chicago has a problem, what can we do about it?
Well, yeah, you're right. The survey or the assessment's just one step in the process. The next step is action plan.
Okay.
You need to then follow up and get them to be able to bring in their action plan. So if you take a look on Toronto, working with the IT, so they're not quite where they want to be, but they're updating some of their systems. Chicago, no plans yet. So what's going on with the management team and the leadership team and the employees within Chicago? So it takes this type of getting into the details to be able to make it work, but it's HR and talent management that needs to lay out the foundations of what's needed. If you do this well, you can accelerate your program. Obviously, it's working in Toronto. If you don't, then you're going to get laggards like Chicago, and the whole thing is going to get slowed down and stuck in the sand trap.
That makes sense. And how important is measuring this at intervals in time as part of the process? I mean, sometimes it takes longer.
Absolutely does, and what we have found, the bigger the organization, the bigger the change, the longer it takes. So you can't look at this as, we're going to just pop this in and it's going to roll out and we're done. It's a process. And so sometimes your metrics and the graphics shown here display that you want to track this over time. It may be by month, it may be by quarter, it may be by year, depending upon your organization. But in the example that's shown graphically, you can see Canada's moving along, moving up the scale. The U.S. has got some slowdowns, and obviously Chicago is probably a key part of that.
Okay, that makes sense. So once you have all this data, then how do you involve others in your organization, like finance, quality, or marketing, in this whole process?
Well, part of involving them in the process is you want to be able to take this information that you're collecting about human behavior and tie it to business results. So we're talking with Chris and others in advance and talking about KPIs or key performance indicators. And this is where marketing and HR or marketing and finance need to really partner together to bring together those various indicators. In some KPIs as an example, certainly sales and revenue we all hear about within our companies. That's an obvious one. There may be other things that interfere with that, as far as a retailer, as far as the store where it's located and competition around it. But you can also look at other things. How much volume are we moving? How many customers are we now getting signed up? What's the utilization? What's the customer satisfaction scores? What's our rate of maybe signing on new customers? And then finance may be able to provide some profitability numbers as well. So you have to work that out, kind of company by company, project by project. But the bottom line here is you got to do the math. You've got to try to be able to tie your KPIs then to these human measures and bring the two of them together. That's what's going to get your executive team excited. That's what's going to get them involved in wanting to look at this and also, most importantly, drive the action and accelerate your program.
That makes sense. And can you share with us examples of how that might look when you're trying to compare KPIs against some of the data that you're finding from the human resource side?
Yeah, we'll go back to our same slide here. And so what you can do is you can look at, again, your organization structure and chart. But on the right-hand side, we took out where it said action planning, and we put in this case, a KPI called customer satisfaction. So what we're tracking here is we've got this new event that's occurring within this company. We're monitoring what employees are thinking, feeling, doing against this, and then we're monitoring or bringing in our KPI to decide, is it having an impact there?
Okay.
And that may be a lagging indicator because what comes first is the employee component of it. What comes second then is how it hits the customer. In this case, we use the KPI customer satisfaction. So Toronto, they're saying not only their scores going up, but they're seeing a bump in their customer satisfaction scores. Chicago, on the other hand, in this example, they're lagging behind on this new event, not doing anything. They're also seeing declines in customer sat scores. So it's bringing these pieces together that help accelerate the whole process.
And I would imagine that it's just as important to measure that over time as well.
You're right on target. I think you read the script. It's, here's an example of that in front of you. You want to be able to measure that customer satisfaction information over time as well. Just like my example with me at the bank and I got a teller that doesn't know how to do this, my customer satisfaction scores are going to lag. If you've got a team that knows and understands what needs to be done, that's what's going to move those customer sat scores.
That makes sense. And, I'd like to ask the audience a question at this point, because I think it's an important component, as you've done a great job of introducing and discussing the importance of not only looking at the human side, but also involving other areas in the organization to pull KPI data and look at linkage analysis. Let's actually launch a poll for the audience to take a look at and respond to today, because I'm really curious from the group on how you will respond to this question. And the question to the audience is, how often does marketing invite HR, or human resources, to assist with a major campaign or product launch to ensure that employees are on board? I'm very curious as to the results of that. And again, you've got on your screen now everyone that's participating has the opportunity to respond, whether it's all the time, most of the time, sometimes, seldom, or not often at all. And I think that's an interesting thought. And as the poll results, as everyone's completing the poll, I want to ask another follow-up question to you, Mike, and that is, why is measurement so important to accelerate a campaign?
Well, it's a great question, and again, I go back to there's a kind of a basic human premise. It's kind of funny because you're even utilizing it here by asking the audience their information and converting that into numbers. People love to keep score. They like to know, how am I doing? And you see this in sports, you see this in games, you see this in school. We've all been kind of taught that process, from early childhood. So measurement drives awareness, measurement drives accountability, that then drives action, and then should drive rewards. Most reward systems aren't just Santa Claus type rewards where Santa shows up and here you get a bonus to your, base pay. Most reward systems are tied to some type of metrics. You want to do the same thing in a major campaign rollout. Measurement's also the cornerstone to true customer-focused talent management. And we hear a lot about, shifting from HR to talent management, but a key component of that is measurement, but customer-focused measurement. Things that are important to the customer. How do you bring that forward? You must have good measurement if you're going to be a high-performing company. If you want to be an average company, then you can probably slack off on the measurement side. But if you want to be high-performing, just like high-performing athletes, they use measurement to be able to really help them understand where are they at and how can they continue to get better. HR and marketing, HR and finance really need to partner to be able to make that happen and bring those measures into place so that you can get that acceleration you're looking for.
That makes sense. And let's take a look at those poll results now, because what strikes me, and as I actually expected it, when we ask the question, how often does marketing invite HR to assist with a major campaign or rollout of a new product or concept, we're seeing that it's not so often. We are seeing, better than 60% of the folks out there either seldom or not often at all involving, cross collaboration between departments and an organization for a major product launch.
Right. I'm looking at the results now live with you as well. Chris, you're seeing it too. To some degree, it's not a surprise. So oftentimes marketing kind of lives in their part of the building or in their silo doing their things. HR's in another part. Maybe the only time the two cross is when somebody leaves or somebody gets hired. But the reality of what should be happening, and smart companies are doing this, is they're bringing those groups together. And we're seeing this starting to occur as HR is shifting its focus from HR to talent management and starting to try to get its head around what is talent management, how does it work, and one of the spots for talent management to really take off is when you have a new campaign and you're trying to bring something out. That's when you really need to think about, do we really have the right people in place to deliver? Is the talent actually there? Chris, any thoughts from your end as far as some of the scores that you're seeing here?
Yeah, I think one important piece is that it's hard to move marketing if you're an HR, right? In many ways, they have the leverage in the relationship. It seems to me that where I've seen success in integrated HR marketing-driven campaigns, HR has been the proactive party and said, give me a place at the table. And I think part of that is what you said before, Mike. HR needs to rely on metrics and to set up and plan for metrics so that it can build a business case. I think it's easy for marketing not to take into account organizational issues if the business case can't be easily built.
Yeah, very well said. I think to add to that, we're all on the same team, but as the company gets bigger and geographically gets more dispersed, you tend to forget that, and it's hard to keep everybody informed. So it really has to be woven into the culture, too, then, of the company and how they make decisions with the thought and the concept of bringing these groups together.
That makes sense. And, someone from the audience just chimed in with another question that I think is really interesting, too, as we talk about the strategic approach, and that is, how long should you monitor activity around a product launch or campaign launch?
That's going to vary a lot. The length of time that you're kind of keeping this alive. Oftentimes companies run different types of surveys and activities. And the last thing you want to do is run a survey or a survey program and burn people out.
Okay.
So as soon as you kind of get through that curve of pissed offness, that's where you want to end, if you can. Don't keep it going. What you're looking to do here is to monitor the group while you're in that curve.
Okay.
The last thing you want them to do is to bail out early, because then you've lost your whole investment. You want them to be able to live through that curve, even though it's painful, even though you're trying to get them on board, because you're trying to get to those higher levels. So the length of time is driven by the curve, and the curve could vary as far as how long that's going to take to implement. The Disney example took them years to build that new park. The Enterprise example, they could start doing that literally weeks after the concept came out and testing that and putting that into play. So each organization has to look at it. It's really important here to get marketing involved, because you want marketing also monitoring what are the customers saying, what are the customers feeling. Are we getting more customers signing up for this particular product and service? That's why it all has to come together.
That makes sense. And, Chris, let me follow up, because you've got so much experience in both customer satisfaction, measurement, and loyalty programs. From your expertise, why is it important for marketing to have human resource and talent professionals on board during a launch like this?
I think, Christy, that is a critical question. And as you saw in the Disney case, you actually have to work to build employee awareness, understanding, and I think most importantly, support for corporate initiatives. And what we've seen in many cases, recently a wireless company did not bring HR in at the beginning of the process. They brought them in a little bit later, but once we started measuring employee readiness as well as awareness, etc., we saw that support varied wildly throughout the organization. And so you have a strategic initiative that is critical for the company's mission and market success. it would seem to me that strong and widespread employee engagement is a priority. And at the very least, those employees and positions and functions that have a clear direct impact on the success or failure for an initiative, they at the very least should be fully aware and engaged. And even then, we find that's often not the case. Again, our research shows that those companies that work hard at both the internal and external components of a campaign equally tend to have more successful initiatives and campaigns. And I think all this argues strongly for involving HR early in the planning for any major campaign. And if you don't do that, as our wireless client sounds, at least bring them in later on. It's better if you have to have employee support.
That makes perfect sense. And, focusing more on that strategic aspect, I want to piggyback on the discussion that we had earlier about KPI measures and ask you in your experience also, what types of KPIs should marketing and human resources build into those campaigns? What are the critical ones they should really consider?
Yeah, good question, Christy. Mike listed many of the critical KPIs for the marketing function earlier, and most often these focus on revenue and profit. HR metrics, on the other hand, have to be more typically focused on quality and productivity. But in addition to these, the nature of the campaign or initiative will also have an impact on the types of KPIs needed. For example, if a campaign centers on the launch of a new service, say, and there's some expectation that customers are going to contact your company, some by web or by phone or retail location to get more details, then the KPI should include some sort of volume measure, contact rates, sign-ups on the marketing side, for instance. On the HR side, you may want to have more contact resolution measures. And many times we have to actually go to customers and get satisfaction with website or call center contacts in order to build and monitor that KPI. On the other hand, a company improvement initiative might include customer satisfaction with quality on the marketing side, but employee perceptions of internal service quality to handoffs on the HR side. As Mike said earlier, if you can't measure it, you can't manage or improve it. And so putting some hard work into designing the marketing and HR KPIs, and I would do that up front. I think it has to be part of the campaign design. That's integral to a successful campaign plan.
And I guess to add on to what you had mentioned as well, Chris, that the internal employee view of customer satisfaction, an easy piece to pick up if you're running some surveys. Asking the employees, how's the quality of service at your branch? Has it gotten better or worse over the last 6 months? Capturing that information can be very helpful for not only HR development and talent development, it can be extremely helpful for the marketing team because they can use that as an early indicator of what they may see then on their customer sat scores. And that's how these pieces need to come together and actually work together.
That makes sense. And I'm actually really curious from the audience as well, and so segueing into this, I do have a poll question that I'd like to ask the audience to participate in again, and that is around that KPI measures. And so if you can respond to what KPIs does your organization currently link employee engagement campaigns to? We've got a number of selections there. I know Chris and Mike both just shared some great examples. Some of them are listed right here, and then so things like revenue growth, customer satisfaction, product quality, and then sort of on the human resource side, measures around turnover and retention, safety, diversity initiatives, and the like. And so if all of our audience members can select what kind of KPI measures are you currently linking employee engagement campaigns to, that would be great because I think it'll be interesting to see what's happening out there here in North America around linking employee engagement campaigns to different KPI measures. And as our results come in, they're coming in pretty fast and furiously. And interestingly enough, we're seeing quite a variety here of responses. But, obviously profitability tends to be quite important as well as customer satisfaction. It looks like our poll is just about closed, and folks should be able to see the results any moment now. If you aren't seeing them yet momentarily, you'll see them. And what we're seeing is that 55% of our audience today is looking at KPIs around revenue growth and profitability. Now, to be, of course, that's expected right now, given the challenging economic times that many organizations have faced over the last year and a half. So that certainly makes sense. But what is promising is to see that there's also a really continued focus on customer satisfaction, with 64% of our audience today really focusing around measures, KPI measures around that as well.
But I think with the crunch, obviously, in the financial situation that the world economy is in, companies are recognizing that you better hang on to the customers that you have. Try to do a good job with them. So it is great to see that many of those in the audience are trying to bring their employee campaign or employee engagement measures together with customer sat measures. You can break that down a bit further then and really tie that back to individual campaigns. If you're not careful, you could get some kind of false readings out there where you may get some employees that are engaged and it ties to customer sat and you think you're done. But the reality is that's just the beginning. You need to be monitoring that, keeping an eye on that. The revenue side is interesting as well. C on the quality, product quality, that is tricky and tough. Especially if you're a consumer products type organization or manufacturing organization, it's sometimes hard to be able to tie engaged employees to end product quality. So you need to then look at that in a little bit different way and look at maybe some more internal measures as far as quality levels.
Sure.
And that could be various quality programs that you have into place. So that one, I think, as an overall group, obviously needs to be looked at, and it's a bit concerning that it's that low.
On the internal side, though, what is promising as we are looking forward to 2011 and the economy is really starting to turn is the emphasis that talent management is having on retention and turnover issues. So it looks as though our audience, about 60% or so, are really starting to make that shift and really focusing on the importance of retaining their top talent, looking at succession planning, looking at ways to be able to retain those employees that have really weathered the storm with them well.
Absolutely. So that's an important piece to bring in. Obviously, safety, probably more of a manufacturing type of a component as well. Looks a bit low. Diversity, certainly an important cultural component that needs to be viewed too.
That makes sense, absolutely. And I want to move on to some questions that are coming in from our audience. We do have quite a few coming in today, so let me move on to some of those so we have an opportunity to spend some time addressing some of the questions that you have. This question I'm going to address to you, Chris. It's coming from someone from New York City, and they said that their firm invests heavily in customer satisfaction research. Would the Accelerate program be useful to them in making new initiatives to strengthen customer loyalty and helping make those be more successful?
Thanks, Christy. I think this could be one of the most valuable applications of the Accelerate program. And those of you out there who have been involved in corporate campaigns to improve customer loyalty know that in a lot of cases, these goals are very hard to achieve. And I think in part that's due to the fact that your competitors are doing the same thing you are, and they've got their own initiatives in place. So it's hard to gain competitive edge. But I think a more important cause for the partial success of many of these customer sat and loyalty initiatives is that the support of employees doesn't extend much beyond middle management. Where we see pretty high understanding and support scores are key managers and not much beyond that typically. So I think customer loyalty improvement efforts have been more successful when awareness and support of all involved employees is part of the plan, the initial plan for launch. And more generally speaking, I think many improvement initiatives ultimately depend on not just the specific campaign, but on changing the culture of the organization. And again, these types of changes take time, but can succeed, I think, when management and HR work together in a concerted way and to identify and overcome the barriers to full employee engagement, engagement in general, and engagement in the changes that are needed.
That makes sense. One of the things that just came in from another audience member, her name is Barb, and she's asking, Mike, maybe you can address this one for us. How do you measure what employees are thinking?
I think what you want to do as far as measuring employees' thinking is break that down a bit.
Okay.
Certainly, one of the components that you want to measure is the strategic side. You know, do they get it? Do they understand the strategy? And in doing so, you need to write some questions that relate to that, specifically about the direction that the company's headed, specifically about the benefits that this may bring to the organization, to test that out and see if they get it. And if your answers are kind of or don't really know, then you know as an HR group and as an operations group, you've got some more work to do there. When it comes to other questions, then you can ask them just kind of point blank, do you have the training that's needed to be able to do this? Do you have the resources? Do you have the tools? That's how you tap into what they're thinking. And you want to write the questions in such a way that when you get them back to the managers within the various segments of your company, they're actionable. They're things that they'll understand and go, I need to do this.
So it's really focusing on those basics for that employee. And I think that helps maybe drive it down to the frontline focus. I know, Chris, you said that it was tough sometimes senior management, middle management understand it, but driving it down to that frontline basic employee out in the field, that's really important to focus on those basics.
Absolutely. It's that army of people that's going to help make that product and that campaign come alive. And if that army of people is not ready to move, then your campaign is going to get slowed down and you're not going to get the results that you want. You're going to be stuck in the sand trap.
And many of those initiatives directly affect the frontline interaction with customers. You know, we're demanding something of those frontline troops, and yet they're not fully on board.
That makes sense, absolutely.
This also spills into the world of manufacturing, where if you're a consumer products group or a high-tech manufacturer, you need to understand what it is that you're doing and how it impacts the customer. And get customer feedback as well, even though it may be indirectly coming to you. So you may be making a product, selling it to a big box store like a Best Buy or a Home Depot or a Walmart, but somehow you need to get some feedback to the people manufacturing the product so they can make the improvements.
That makes sense. And I think it's also, we see that in the healthcare industry too, where those frontline clinicians are out there working every day on improving patient care, and they really, every day, 24/7, live that experience, trying to make a difference for those patients that they serve. You know, another question that came in from Matt, which I think is a great question. So thanks, Matt, for typing that question in and letting us know. And your question is, are there any suggestions on how do you properly gain employee involvement when rolling out new technology in an organization? Well, that's a big undertaking.
Yeah, I'll share a little technology story. And Chris, I apologize if you've heard this one before, but it gives you an idea how long I've been in the workforce. A major company was shifting from using IBM Selectric typewriters to word processors. So the IT team spent months studying, deciding, purchasing got involved, made this big purchase, etc. And over one weekend, they decided to retool the entire corporate office, took on all the typewriters and put in all new PCs and equipment. Well, come Monday morning when everybody walked in and they were trying to get letters out and other things done, no one had a clue as to how to use this new equipment. And so, as the storyline goes, there were actually 5 or 6 administrative assistants hiding in a closet because they found some old typewriters, and that's how they were getting their work done.
I didn't hear that story before, Mike.
You can picture it, and we've been around before computers. I think it really comes to life. But going back to Matt's question, how do you properly gain involvement when you're rolling out technology? Again, you have to look at these key principles and say, do they understand the strategy behind the technology? Emotionally, are you getting them hooked? And then also, do they know how to use it? And same with the story with UPS, rolling out technology to its customers. They had to come in and provide training. They had to come in and hook it up. They required the customer to have either an internet connection, Wi-Fi, or a telephone line to that machine. Same thing has to happen with employees. You've got to get them involved on the technology side, often overlooked from the IT department. This, again, is where HR and talent management need to step up. This is your role. This is how you make a difference in a company.
Great. Excellent. I want to remind everyone that if you would still like to ask our speakers some questions, there's certainly an opportunity yet. We have just a few minutes left in our hour of time together today. So please type your questions if you do have those that you'd like to ask of our speakers today. Chris, let me ask you a question. Because you work with marketing executives around the U.S. quite regularly, how do we convince marketing that this sort of, program can impact the bottom line? Working jointly with talent management professionals.
Yeah, I think, Christy, in a way, this is what needs to be done. This is building the business case, right? Just looking at it for a moment from the market research side, many of the major market research firms in our industry, the one that you and I and Mike work in, have made ROI modeling, return on investment modeling, a key focus of our service to clients. And now I think there are especially in the last 5 years, there are far more powerful and reliable ways to evaluate and quantify the contribution of specific improvements to the bottom line. And this works both on the organizational side and on the customer experience side. Having said that, I do want to put out one caution there. Reliable forecasting of this sort of improvement impact takes time and the cooperation of your finance folks, operations, data warehouse people. All of them have to get involved to allow us to build these powerful and sophisticated kind of forecasting models. But in the end, I think it's in all of our interest to find better ways to quantify the costs and benefits of specific campaigns and initiatives, and to bring into the mix the additional benefit generated by strengthened employee engagement. I think in the end, that is the critical core competence we need to have.
Thank you so much. And this is a great question that just came in from another audience member who works in a service-based industry that's experiencing a lot of high turnover. And that's how do you keep employees excited, involved, those front line, maybe the non-exempt population. Any suggestions about programs they can roll out to help engage their employees? And this is coming from someone who works in a call center environment where there's particularly high turnover.
Right. And engaging people is, again, very popular these days and something that many organizations are trying to get their hand around as far as what is it that we need to do. Certainly, one of the steps up front is the assessment work. Mm-hmm. You've got to find out in an organization with a lot of employees, maybe in a call center or service situation, where are they at right now? Okay. Then you need to start to set some goals and hold your leadership team accountable towards those goals. Again, this is on the metrics side. Then the next piece would be the actions. You're expecting them to take on certain actions. What we have found over the years is actions can come in kind of a pyramid approach. At the base of the pyramid would be kind of the basics of the job. Sure. Do they really have the tools, the information, the things they need to do their job? Does somebody stop by and give them some coaching and some training and tell them when they're doing a good job? In a call center environment, sometimes the biggest headache is not having the information to be able to answer the customer's questions. So you end up continually passing people on to somebody else. So there's an investment, too, that the company needs to make, and they have to make a decision. Are we going to invest in these people and give them more control so that they can answer the questions and further educate them? Or do we see it as a high turnover job and we're not going to invest in them, and then you get into this spiral activity where they continue to turn? The other piece is you're kind of going up the kind of pyramid, if you will, would be compensation, cooperation of fellow employees, really building a team environment. And again, in a call center situation, building a team's critical. They're on the phone. If that's the only interaction that they have, they're missing a social component in their life. And so you've got to create some fun ways to be able to make that happen. At the top of the pyramid, it goes back to some of the things that Chris had mentioned. What's the strategy? Why are we doing this? What are we trying to accomplish in this call center? what are we trying to accomplish with these customers? So think about the pyramid approach. It could really give you some guidance on what to do. Also think about the metrics. You need that to be able to hold people accountable and set goals and targets for them.
That's a great answer. You know, baseline measures are so important, the setting the goals. I'm looking at really all levels within the organization to develop those action plans. That makes sense. You know, we are just about out of time today, and so I'd like to ask both of our speakers. First of all, I'd like to thank both of them for their insightful comments today and see if they have anything else they'd like to share in terms of closing thoughts with our audience today as we wind down our time together exploring how you can best accelerate campaigns and product launches within your organization.
Chris, I'll toss the ball to you if you want to take the first shot.
Oh, thank you, Mike. I much appreciate it. I guess my general feeling is that first and foremost, you have to build the overall engagement of your employees with the company. If you've got high levels of employee engagement, you have all sorts of specific options to engage them in an initiative or a campaign. But if engagement levels are low, then you have to start with, listen, what's in it for me? You have no other starting point. So I would urge everyone to focus first and foremost on employee engagement overall.
My closing thoughts, similar to Chris's, is you've got to get people involved. If you want to accelerate the process and speed it up, you've got to bring some metrics in. You have to start setting some targets. And most importantly, this is the area that human resources and talent management needs to step up, bring their expertise to the table so that they can help marketing and IT and other areas deliver the product, services, and skill sets that they have. But marketing's got to be, or HR has to be a key partner with marketing and the other groups. Thanks for having us on your event here, Christy. We really appreciate it. And
it's our pleasure. We're glad that both of you were able to join us today, and I know that our audience, seeing from the head nods and folks listening in also via webinar, that they are enjoying today's presentation. And many of you are talent management professionals, and so as a thank you for being part of today, you'll certainly be able to receive your HRCI certification. So that information is displayed for you on the monitors throughout the room right now. So your HRCI program ID number is 74269. Again, once I'd like to thank our speakers, both Mike Schroeder and Chris Jaworski, for today's program. It's a wonderful opportunity to share your insights into employee engagement and customer satisfaction and loyalty measures and how both human resources and marketing professionals can work together. Thank you, everyone. We wish you the best of the rest of your week, and thanks for participating.